Good morning, everyone. Today's the Town Council regular meeting, Wednesday, April 6th, 2022, 8 a.m. in the Town Hall Rose Room. Can we all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're gonna fix that. That needs to go back there. Okay, item number 2 is visitors. Do we have any visitors that would like to be recognized? If you do, just please stand over there.
Is it okay if I pass these out?
Sure, yep.
Follow along.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Of course.
Thank you.
I was, Bruce Light incidentally, I was here 2 weeks ago. And just to inform you about our committee's meeting that we're going to have, and we actually met a week ago Saturday. One of the prime things we wanted to find out is there really enough enthusiasm to form some beautification committee? And I can tell you that was a resounding yes. We probably had 15, 16 people there. Many just wanted to be part of it, but there was also a pretty broad representation of, there were 2 council members there incidentally, and pretty good broad representation of other groups in town, from tree committee to garden club. So there was a really good representation. Chamber of Commerce was there, and there was a whole bunch of others as well. So that part was resolved quickly. Then what we wanted to do, and I was going to ask you to follow along for this, we wanted to say what we were going to be about. So we crafted this statement of purpose, and that's why I gave this out to you. The Clinton Beautification Committee is created to enhance the natural beauty of the town. And the idea behind that was we live in a beautiful area, in a very quaint town, and the committee would be formed to enhance that. And as to how we were going to do it, with support of citizen volunteers. Now, the citizen volunteers was really critical because we're going to get a lot of help from people. We know that. People are very enthusiastic. We were just talking about this for the pollinator gardens. People are very enthusiastic about supporting it and lending their time to it. We also know that we need the support of town agencies and committees also. We had initially said Public Works, and Public Works is going to be critical to it. But as Carl pointed out, there's going to be a lot of others also involved, so they're going to be critical to the success of it as well. And what we would do would be plan, initiate, and maintain. The maintain is important. There's been a lot of things happen in the past, and all of a sudden, they start, and then nobody maintains it and gives up on it. The purpose is not just to enhance the beauty of the town and make it more pleasurable for people to live in, but it's to create pride in the town, and hopefully that pride would be passed on by other people in the town, whether it's residents and particularly businesses. So that's the idea of the thing. What we did then was address many of the areas that we thought could be looked at. And that was the whole laundry list, and everybody had it in favor. We didn't do that to just create a list. The idea would be we would create priorities. I'm saying this assuming you're going to appoint a committee. We would create priorities and come up with a plan for each one. Carl pointed out, and I have a lot of work experience in this incidentally, that an idea is just an idea until it comes to fruition. So we would come back, I don't know if it'd be presented to the council or Carl or whatever. We'd have a detailed plan for every one of these things that we want to do. We'd be in this for the long haul. It might be years to develop these things. It might be 1 or 2 a year. We don't know. We'd have to get in and prioritize things. But the idea is we're in this for the long haul, and it would be something that we'd like to see go on forever. As far as the charge or scope, I've kept Carl involved in this whole process, and he said, you would need a charge or a scope. We're going to leave that back to the council. We'll do what you want. So you'll set the scope for us. We left it purposely broad so that we didn't pen ourselves in. So we're expecting you to come back and tell us what you would expect of us. So that's basically it. Our request is that the town council appoint a beautification advisory committee. And we can't really do much until that happens, so I added on to this and the timing. Now, I know our timing is bad. We should have been doing this last fall, but we just came up with the idea now, quite honestly. And we know you got an awful lot of things on your plate right now, too. But we'd ask that you do this in as timely manner as you possibly can, so we can get to work. As far as the membership, I know in pretty much all your other committees, commissions, whatever they be, you have a political divide. So many Republicans, so many Democrats, and a certain number of people. We would ask, if you can do it, let us keep that number as fluid as possible. Right now, we have 9 people who want to be on the committee. That number could go up and down. So if you can, allow us to form our own committee and have the number of people on it that we would like. And we would certainly hope it doesn't come down to political 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, or whatever it may be. I have no idea what the political affiliation is of the people who want to be on this committee. So in your charge for this, I hope you can keep it non-political. Now, the last item I have on here is funding. And I want to make sure you understand that this is my personal opinion. We have other people on the committee who feel differently. But I believe that the appearance and image of the town is critical and should be part of town government. I believe the image of a town is important when people come to look at a town, to become a resident, for a business. And the way a town looks, I think, is very critical in the decision those people make. So you're going to find out that there's a lot of things that can be done very inexpensively, and the labor is going to be free, primarily. But there are some areas that's going to require professional management. The one that got me started was the floral baskets for downtown. As you get into projects, you probably know your own experiences. Once you get involved, things aren't as easy as they look. And from the floral baskets viewpoint, from a practicality and a safety standpoint, we're going to need some professional help on this. I have talked to Todd, and he had a great meeting with him yesterday, and he was very helpful, but there's limitations that he can do. So we're probably going to have to, I asked him, well, who's doing it in other towns? And he thinks other towns have outside vendors who manage this floor. So we may have to go that route. The other thing that's involved with the baskets is, it's a huge project. And we're not sure we want to start with something so grand that could be a big problem. So we've already talked about scaling back a program for this year, make it a small program, a pilot program, so we understand the problems that may occur and be ready for them when we go to a large. So right now we're thinking maybe just Post Office Square, some area that could be relatively easily done and managed effectively. And learn from our mistakes, because we know we'll make some too. So what questions might you have?
Anybody have any questions?
I would just say, you know, I think it's a great idea, and you know, I've been a leader in different groups in Clinton for a long time, and when you have somebody like Bruce, I've known Bruce my whole life, who's got energy and wants to do this, I think as a council we should move forward. I don't know what the next step would be, but that's my opinion.
We put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and then we'll have a discussion at that point about it.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that you vote on this today. Anytime something like this comes up, though, it's always a good idea to bat it around. And so I wasn't expecting you to vote on this today,
But timely would be important, so I hope we can put it on the next agenda.
And request that if Carl, if you could reach out to CCM and/or the COG and ask for what different town budgets look like to manage it, if they are doing it through outside, if they're managing internally, how many staff members are usually allocated to such projects.
I have some personal experience with
Well, that's what got us started.
I got the fan going, so I
I have
can.
some personal experience with the beautification committee, so I know it inside and out, know the budget amounts, I know how it was structured, how funding was raised.
Okay, well, it'd be
So
great
it
for
wasn't
us
all on
to have an analysis so we understand what could be incorporated, what we could do through donations, potentially.
My first discussion with Carl was what got this going. And his experience with Darien was really helpful. No other questions? Dennis?
I have a question, I just make a comment. I mean, I just gotta say this and get it off my chest. I was on a group of women way back when came to, I think I was on the board, Park Rec then, said they wanted to build a new beach playground. Well, those women got together, they were a committee, they called themselves the Beach Town Committee, went out and got their donations, and came to the town with like 2/3 of their funding before they even came to us. And then they said to us, we'd like to have the town back us and put up a new town beach playground. So quite frankly, that's how I come about things. It's easy to create these things and then just dump it on the town. And I'm speaking from my heart now. I mean, I would like to see people come up and have the mechanics, have the money, have something to get this thing started. So that was just one, and I can name those women because I remember when I worked on the committee with them. There was 20 wonderful people, and they worked like heck, and they had donations. We went up to the parks and ran fairs. I forgot what they raised, maybe $19,000, $20,000, and at the end, the town only had to put in, I don't know, $6,000 or $8,000 to finish that beautiful playground down there. Then they came to us and said, would the town please form an official town committee and build a... That's only one. I was on another one years before that. Tom might even remember. Touchdown Club. People in town said, oh, geez, we need a new press box at the football field. A guy by the name of Al D'Angelo said, okay, we'll get a committee together. Fathers, everybody, donations, money and everything. They raised, again, an astronomical amount of money before they came to the Park Rec and said, we have the funds to get started. We have an organized committee. We'd like to get your permission to put the thing up. And that's how things used to be done. Now, all of a sudden, people walk in the door, we want to create this committee, you guys are responsible for it. I don't think, quite frankly, that's the way government should be running. I mean, like you said, we have a lot of things on our plate. We got a charter, never mind, I won't go on, we got a long meeting today, but
Let me ask
that's
you-
just my personal feelings that I would like to see it more organized, come to us with a plan, and get some funds first. Don't just come in and say, well, we need funds from us.
Let me ask everybody a question. Have I given you the impression that we expect the town council to do this?
No.
You didn't?
I thought I made it pretty clear. Well, I'm going by what Carl said, that we would be an advisory committee.
But I certainly didn't mean to give people the impression, if I did, that we were going to lay it on you. I made it pretty clear that this would be a long-term project. Now, as far as the money goes, Dennis, you and I have a difference of opinion on that. I think that's important. I think that's integral part of town government. And the other part of it is, because it's good for the overall town. It's good for economic development, it's good for a lot of things. So you and I may differ on that part of it. There are people in our committee, I told you this was my personal opinion, there are people in our committee who have said that they'd be willing to raise money. So, but I feel strongly the way a town looks is important. I've been in town 50 years, but I was transferred on my work up to Boston. And we kept our house here at the time, but I needed a residence up there. The very first thing I did was drive down to downtown to see what the place looked like. And I think a lot of people do that. And I think that's one of the things that's held Clinton back for a long time. I really do. But I hope I didn't give you the impression that we were just committee.
Well, I remember your last statement is, we'll leave it up to the town council and you guys can...
No, you need to appoint the committee. That's what I'm saying. I hope I gave the impression we were gonna do all the
Can I
work.
interject a thought here? I think maybe we're getting thrown off by the word advisory, because Bruce's concept is totally hands-on. It's not sitting back and saying the town should do this, the town should do that. This is a committee comprised of a lot of worker bees who want to get the work done and the job done by the committee itself. It's not advisory like the design review board where they weigh in with an opinion and then the business goes on around the outside. This is a group that is committed to making these projects happen. And as far as the fundraising goes, we need to have a committee put together that can actually, with a unit with a name that can do fundraising. I mean, I know everybody at that meeting the other week was ready to hand money over right then and there to get these flower baskets done because everybody was so excited about it. But without an authentic committee to cite as the group that's raising the money. I mean, you mentioned at the beach, they had a name and they had a thing going. I think that is the cart that will come after the horse. Once the committee is named and approved, that's the horse, and then the cart will be getting to work on fundraising. And so it was never the intention to come to, I don't believe that Bruce's intention was to come to the town and say, okay, here we are, what do you want from us? There were many suggestions about where the committee would like to do work in the town going forward. But the intention was never to turn it over to DPW and say, here's what we want to see. These people, we all want to get our hands dirty and get this done ourselves. So as far as fundraising goes, that's part of the plan. I mean, there were people who raised their hands and said, I'm happy to do that. So, I don't know, does that answer any of your concerns, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm just expressing.
No, I
We've got
understand,
other
and
things to
those
do.
are very,
No problem.
what you said was very, very important.
When I heard advisory committee, that all didn't sound good. I talked to Carl originally, and said, well, how would this come about? You talking charter revision or whatever? And he said, no, the simplest way to make it would be to make you an advisory committee.
Yeah, it's just semantics,
It's-
yeah,
It was never our intent to advise you on what to do.
right,
That was just
right,
the process to create the committee.
yeah.
We'll do the work, Dennis.
I mean, I think everybody's in agreement on the council, obviously, the beautification of the town, keeping the upkeep of the town. It is important that people drive into the town and see something, that they like, that's appealing, and that wants to make them come back. So obviously, I think everybody's in agreement on that. As far as the scope of the work, I think that's something you addressed that you'd like the council to be involved with. I mean, we can put this on our agenda for our next meeting and then have an open discussion about what we feel as a council. And like you said, there's probably target areas and target points that we should go after. A broad scope, a broad stroke is going to be kind of difficult because then the focus is all over. If we're going to try to keep the focus directed at, what things that we would like them to work on, then I think that would be important for us as a council, then to put that scope together and that charge together for them. So at least we're all on the same page as it relates to that.
May I ask just a quick question?
Mhm.
So these committees are allowed to fundraise, and are they allowed to apply for grants, Carl?
It depends what the grant is. I think the
Okay.
grant should be through the umbrella of the town.
Okay,
Not
just wondering.
a group go off doing its own thing.
Got it.
Again, it's a peg back to some sense of officialdom and some structure, rather than 20 disparate groups going in 20 different competing directions.
Definitely.
Great.
Good. Thank
for
you,
your
Bruce.
time.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Hi.
I'm Lori Jaffe. I'm the secretary of the Clinton Human Rights Advisory Committee, and Tom Schultz, who's the chair, is here with me. And I'm here on behalf of the committee, and I'm going to read some of what I have because I have statistics and I didn't memorize them last night. we're here on behalf of the committee to support the Mayor's United Against Anti-Semitism initiative, which is an initiative of the American Jewish Committee and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And I believe that you all have a copy of the proclamation since it's attached to the agenda. And the committee wants to thank you for placing this on the agenda today. This initiative was formed to confront violent acts of anti-Semitism in our country. According to the FBI 2019 hate crime statistics, American Jews, who make up less than 2% of our American population, were the victims of 60% of anti-religious hate crimes. And according to an Anti-Defamation League survey, in 2020, there were 185 anti-Semitic incidents here in Connecticut. So the proclamation that you'll be considering later this morning sets forth the language of the Mayors United Against Anti-Semitism initiative. The proclamation condemns anti-Semitism in all its forms, supports national, state, and local government efforts to eradicate anti-Semitism, and affirms that a climate of mutual respect among all citizens is the basis of pluralistic communities. To date, 46 cities and towns in Connecticut have signed on to support this very important initiative, including our neighbors, Madison and Guilford, and Chester and Middletown here in Middlesex County. The CHRC hopes that you all will vote to support this very important proclamation, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Lori.
I'm brief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, we'll move on to number 3, which is the approval of the minutes from the March 16th, 2022 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Can I make an amendment to those?
Sure.
Mary, remember I had abstained from voting on the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right, so I'd like to make motion to amend the minutes to say I abstained from approving the minutes of March 2nd.
Good second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
So now I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended minutes.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Item number 4, appointments, reappointments. There are none, so we can move on to item number 5, which is the Mayors United Against Anti-Semitism Proclamation. Everybody has a copy of it in their packet. I'm assuming everybody's read through it. Does anybody have any questions on it? Hearing none, then we could look for a motion then to adopt the proclamation as submitted.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, charter revision next steps. We do have again in our packet as well some information that Carl has given to us.
Mr. Chair, may I ask if we don't have time set aside in our agenda, which I don't see, for budget talks and numbers that we've asked for? I would like to suggest we table this.
Table what?
This discussion for the budget discussion that's coming up in 8 hours, as opposed to this that
What-
doesn't need to be done for 2 years.
So what discussion?
I'm just asking,
Yeah.
is there time to discuss the budget later, the
We've had-
numbers that we asked for?
What numbers, I guess, let's,
So are you asking for a motion to add a discussion of the budget to the agenda?
Yes, I think that's the best way to do it.
so, and to discuss what? Budget items?
So.
Because we've had multiple
some-
meetings on budget already, so that's what I'm just trying to
Some time
clarify.
ago, well, many times, when we've brought up the idea of the unassigned fund balance, we've been told that numbers are coming, numbers are changing, numbers are evolving, and we will get those numbers to you, and then we will make a decision. In Carl's report, supposedly we aren't getting those numbers until minutes before we vote on it. And I have trouble with that. This is my first budget. From the handbook, this is the most important job we have to do. And I want to do it well. And I don't want to be surprised with numbers. You know that many of us want to see that mill rate lowered. And these are the
If we're gonna-
numbers
if we're
we
gonna-
need for it.
Just 1 second. If we're going to get into a discussion about this, then we would have to amend the,
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda.
Second.
all in favor?
You have that discussion?
Discussion?
I think I've said what I wanted to say.
in the agenda?
Well, I guess we're going to move it, we're going to add it then, right now, we'll add it right after number 5 before we talk about charter, because we're not going to table charter, we are going to discuss charter. We'll add it to the amend it to the agenda at this point.
And we already have it scheduled to discuss the budget this evening after the public hearing, correct?
We do, that will not change. We have a special meeting to discuss the budget further after our public hearing.
Okay.
Discussion, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed.
Abstain.
Abstain?
Flip both ways.
Yes, me too. Those two no? Huh?
Yeah, no.
Gotta have a vote of 4. Right. You abstain?
Mhm.
2 noes, 3 noes? Okay, it doesn't pass.
So I will not be getting those numbers until tonight.
I don't know what numbers you're referring to.
The numbers that you were referring to, the numbers that Carl referred
The only
to.
numbers that are in the report would be factual corrections. And that is the only revisions that have been made to the budget thus far, are things that I have brought forward to the council as factual corrections. When our assumptions are changing, I'm giving you updated information which allows for budget amendments. Thus far, I haven't heard anything from the council beyond a desire to appropriate more undesignated fund balance as a revenue, which would articulate to me any revisions that the council wants to make to the budget, one way or the other, that would identify areas where you're actually making reductions to the budget. I am looking at it, I am trying to balance that out. We are dealing with a commodities market, which is way higher than what we assumed when we put in the budget. I have a fundamental problem from doing 25 years worth of public budgets that we would just solve it all on the revenue side of the budget. So I'm trying to find areas where I can talk to department heads of, is that a priority? Is that not a priority? Are there other cuts that I can bring to you? Because to me, fundamentally, the council should be having a discussion about expenditures, which is what I said earlier, of looking at expenditures. That's your job as part of the budget, is looking at the expenditures, not just moving money over. Moving money over is just a simple math exercise. There's no surprise in that. The only surprise is whether there's going to be any further revisions to the expenditures as proposed thus far.
Well,
So,
the surprise, I mean, the
So there is no surprise. So let's be clear on this perception that there's going to be a surprise and the belief that there's going to be not time to react and we need to think through comments. You've got assumptions that went into the budget. So I told you pension assumption for the municipal employee state system, which we don't create that number. That's given to us by the comptroller's office. That number went up. It didn't go down. That number went up. So that's $3,600 roughly of what that went up. Then solid waste went down. Mira came up with some new numbers. That number goes down. It's almost a wash between those two. Net, it's like $200 between the two.
those are the numbers that you had talked about, and those are the numbers we're looking for.
Okay, so $200.
More insurance, I believe you talked about, or more taxes.
Could I finish?
Yes, sure.
$200 is currently the swing on just that. So that's a policy question of, do you amend the budget for transparency's sake and make those changes? Or because it's so small, you just do it as a transfer later in the year? Next is operating assumptions for fuel. Fuel is much, much higher at present. Current pricing suggests 2 to 3 times higher than what was in the budget. So we have to put something in there based on what today's market indications are. So I have new numbers as of the most recent fill that Todd received, giving me what the commodity price is as of right now, trying to figure out how to balance that. Putting that back into the budget, that's over $46,000 has to go back into the budget. Since there hasn't been any discussion of cuts in any way, shape, or form, I have looked to see if there's other cuts that could be brought up as something for the council to consider and discuss. So that would be the possibility of cutting out of capital the Mako vehicle under the police budget. That would be a cut of $33,000. That could be delayed. Since no one has asked that question, I asked that question to come up with more cuts to give to you so you have budget flexibility to figure out a budget going forward. The only other item that I mentioned earlier might come in was healthcare. By this time last year, we had better numbers for healthcare. We are not going to have better numbers by tonight for healthcare. That's not going to be known till the end of the month at the earliest. So there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to be surprised by. The only question is whether or not you want to take the cut I'm offering to you for the Mako vehicle or not, and then what the math problem is that you're going to solve for how much undesignated fund balance has to be appropriated and applied towards capital projects, and what capital projects are going to be funded by fund balance. Those steps have to be taken. It's not just simply a matter of grabbing money out of fund balance, shoving it over as a revenue. You have to appropriate it to individual projects. So that math exercise, you then have to break up the dollar amount and put it into individual projects. That too should not be a surprise.
Right, and so, and everything you just said there is exactly what we're asking for. So if we come to the meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, I don't know how much time we have, but one of the things that we're interested in is that exact last point that you just made. So where are we with the mill rate after everything is done? And what do we have to move over if the council approves it as a revenue exercise that you don't like, but it is an exercise to move money from the undesignated fund over to capital projects? We're gonna be in a situation where we have to make these decisions in a short period of time and then move it over to vote. So what we've been asking for is, can we have all these numbers so that we have looked at it and we come to that meeting at 6 o'clock and just say, this is what we think, I disagree, I agree, blah, 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 and have a more,
Well, I
discussion
can't
with
give you
numbers.
that number because I'm looking for some policy direction. I have received no input on this budget whatsoever, which is, to be perfectly honest, is more than a little disappointing and professionally frustrating. So I have offered up cuts. I have offered up reductions to this budget. And I offered up another one in order to try and solve and bring down the impact of having to put more money in for commodities. If you don't want to cut the Mako vehicle, because there hasn't been any discussion of that, then the number that you're going to move over from fund balance is going to be larger, obviously. If you are going to cut the Mako vehicle, then the number that moves over from fund balance is slightly smaller. So that requires the council to give me input. I am not getting input through this point. And to have it suggested that I'm going to drop information on you as a surprise is a little disturbing to me, when I have gotten no input, and my job is to respond to input I am given from the council.
I think we've asked for the numbers a couple times, and that is.
You have asked solely to move the money over. I told you your first job is to look at the expenditures. There has been no discussion of expenditures. There has been no discussion of any revisions to any expenses. So the sole solution is to be solved by moving it over. The number it doesn't make any difference at that point in time. If the desire is to get to zero, and the desire to spend the fund balance, then that's the number I give you. I don't see what the debate is, since everyone wants to be there.
Yeah.
So the issue too, I mean, so just so we're clear, 6 o'clock, and again, I guess we didn't put it on the agenda, but we're still discussing it, so don't understand that concept, but 6 o'clock we'll have a public hearing, the public will come forth and they'll have their opinion on our budget, okay? Past budgets, we get very limited feedback and pushback on the budget itself, okay? To discuss at the end of the day, if it is to get to a zero mill rate, and the idea and the concept is, and I think the frustration that's boiling over here is that the council itself has done zero cuts. We've cut nothing to our budget.
May I say something? Some of us don't understand why we have to cut when we
There's
have
two ways to get to a budget.
$6.5 million over target in the undesignated fund.
But Carla's also tried to explain that and how that works. Undesignated works on multiple levels.
I understand that.
No, I don't think you do though, because the concept sometimes is 77% of that money is a one-time get, okay? So that money's never coming back. So to continually sit there and say spend, 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 because we want to use that money to get to a mill rate, I don't think anybody here has a problem trying to get to a zero mill rate, okay? I don't think anybody is uncomfortable with that concept. But the concept then being, how do we get to that mill rate change? Do we get it to by making cuts, or do we get it by just taking undesignated? That this concept of we have money, let's spend it, is fiscally irresponsible. Because that money is not coming back into that coffer. Once it's spent, it's gone. People in this town want us to do other things. We want to do other things. If we don't have that money available, we can't do other things. So is it fiscally responsible to just take that money and throw it against our tax so that we can get to zero? Not necessarily. Are we saying that we're not going to do that? No. But at the end of the day, we're arguing about something that ultimately, at the end of the day, what you're saying is, in order for us to get to a zero mill rate, we want to take undesignated funds and apply them to that mill rate so we get to zero. Am I correct?
It is what you did last year.
No. But what happened is,
is what
we
you
went through a
did
process
last
of cuts
year.
as well. And if we're going to go into the back, then previous years, we also had 10% tax increases. We had 5% increases. We had two. So what we're trying to do is get to a level point where everybody wanted a town manager to come in and run our town fiscally responsible and have a professional that does
And we
budgets.
are.
But we're not taking any recommendations. He's giving us recommendations, and then we're just approving those. Nobody on the council has come with any cuts.
You know,
Well,
in previous years, the way the Board of Selectmen worked was we would look at the budget a few times. The department heads would come in and discuss, and then we would go over line by line and in our conscience determine whether it seemed suitable or not. And if we were coming in at some extraordinary increase or any increase, we would debate the merits of each request and make cuts accordingly. For some reason, that discussion never happened this year. The Board of Education submitted a budget, no discussion at all. I mean, I wasn't here for their presentation, no discussion.
Well,
They
it's
got a
every
$600,000 increase without anybody questioning that at all. Despite what you've read in the paper and everywhere else, they're just up and away. Nobody questioned, I think I questioned the overtime in the police budget. Nobody questioned anything else. Nobody questioned DPW. These are the big ticket items. Nobody questioned a $60,000 increase for the library. That's extraordinary. See, that's what Carl's saying. That's where you balance the budget. You live within your means. If you want to stay at a zero tax rate, then you keep the expenses to where it fits. And that did not happen this year. I know my personal opinion, well, I was away, unfortunately, at a lot of the critical junctures, but I kept falling back on the fact that we had asked Carl to bring in a budget with no higher than a specific increase. Now, we did that in October, I believe, so you guys weren't there. But he did. He brought it in at exactly, I believe it was less than what we asked for. So as far as I was concerned, Carl did exactly what we asked him to do. Because he did that does not mean that we still can't question the budget and ask for more reductions. I mean, just because an agency asks for $500,000 more does not mean that they get it. Did they justify every cost center that was in their report? No, they went about giving their report as, it used to be when the Board of Education presented their budget, that meeting was an hour and a half long. And it was, every item was questioned, and then it went to the Board of Finance and they had to do it all over again. This year just went boom, 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 done, finished, no questions. So now, where Carl is having an issue is, we didn't do our job. We did not question anything. We just said, oh, that's what you want? Okay. And I have been on this, sitting behind this desk for a very long time, and I will never believe that a large agency with a large budget doesn't come in assuming that they're going to see cuts. Department comes in and they say, well, maybe we need 150,000, let's ask for 175 here. Maybe we need 500,000 there, let's ask for 550 there. I would be willing to bet that at the end of the day, there's a lot of padding, or some padding, built into these budgets, and we just gave them everything they asked for this year. And that's where I believe Carl is having a problem, because he thought, I don't know what goes on in his head, but maybe he thought we could do even better than a zero budget. That if we did judicious cuts or asked departments to be more circumspect about the requests, maybe we could have brought the budget down expense-wise and been at that zero anyway. So I think the concern is that we have a puddle of money, a little bit extra over what we need right now, which when you make the deductions and the already assigned, the already encumbered money is about 5 million. If you whittle away, that's over the 15%, okay? If you whittle away at that now, I mean, what if we have a Hurricane Sandy? That's where the money comes from to pay for those
But that's what the
expenses.
15% is for, not the 23.
Right,
Mr.
right,
Chairman,
but,
May I interrupt just for 1 second?
Yes.
We're gonna probably have this conversation after the town hearing tonight.
You're right.
Yes.
That's where this
Yes.
hearing,
Yes.
all that is being said
but
right
we
now
have the day to think
We have
about
the
it.
should be said
numbers.
after the
We
town
have the
hearing.
day to
think
Let's
about
hear
it.
from our citizens first and see what they have to say, and then we,
Well, I think,
at this rate, we don't need that
I
special
think
meeting.
Carl's
We're already there now.
frustration is that
And we
he-
voted not to talk.
that we could
We voted
have.
not to talk.
What?
I mean,
Voted
and
not to
the
talk?
thing is
We
that
didn't vote in
every,
favor to amend the
everything-
to amend the agenda.
everything that
No, we
everybody
didn't.
is saying
Yeah.
is valid, and I think it's been taken under advisement. And, you know, Carl brought the budget with, what, $600-something-thousand already cuts before he brought to us. I'm not really interested in cutting expenses. That's not really what I'm interested in. If you
That's
can
our
bring-
job.
If you could.
That's our
See,
job.
and that's where we're gonna end the discussion now.
Okay.
But the problem is that if you're not gonna make cuts, then just sitting there saying we're gonna use that undesignated to do anything that we need to be done, that's irresponsible.
If it was,
Because you have to look at a
if
budget
it
both
was-
ways.
If it was an
We did it last
excessive
year.
amount of money.
Yeah, we did do it last year, but after we made cuts. We made cuts to our budget last year, and at the end of the day, everybody was agreed upon that we wanted to get zero. We were in the middle of a pandemic, we wanted to do that. The budget had cuts, okay? Cuts that came from council, okay? That's a big difference than it is just saying, hey, we have a budget, we want to get to zero, let's just take that money. And we have to stop with the, we have a lot of money talk.
Well, I mean, moving.
We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. We can finish this conversation tonight.
Would be different than moving a small portion over that's needed.
The amount, it's not the
And
amount that we're really
cutting
worrying about.
expenses.
It's not the amount that we're worrying about it. It's the fact that we're sitting there coming out of the box saying, we're not gonna make cuts. You just said, I'm not interested in making cuts.
Yeah, I think it's
We're just
a
gonna
lean
take money
budget.
and pay it down to get our mill rate to
It's
zero.
it's a lean budget, so why go around
That-
cutting things that
But
are-
nobody's
that
had
are
that
good
discussion. The
projects?
frustration is nobody's had that discussion. Nobody said well, is there money available there to make a cut? And let me tell you, at the end of the day, if we said something to a department, which we've done in the past, we did last year, said that you have to cut something out of the budget, it was cut.
Yeah,
They'll make it happen.
I'm sure we
So
can.
I expect for tonight that we'll need some recommendations on where cuts can be made to get to zero then.
Thank you.
Well, that's what we've been trying to get to from the beginning of the budget
So
talks, and
you
we've
as the
had zero.
chairman,
I don't
your
want
job
cuts.
as the chairman to help this council understand that, and you need to bring forward some recommendations.
We've had workshops, and the workshops have been directed by the town manager who's gone through all that and has asked multiple times for cuts and where you can look and where you can do. Okay, we don't have a board of finance any longer. We have a town manager that we wanted to hire who runs the town professionally and can manage the town, fiscally responsible, and bring that information to us so that we as a council, okay, it's not my job to do that, it's council members' job. That's what you signed up for. When we discuss budget, we're falling back as the Board of Finance here, so it's our job as council members to look at a budget, look at the numbers, and see and bring forth things that say, maybe we can cut here. And then we have an open discussion amongst council members. I'm not in charge of this. The council is in
If you'll
charge
let
of
me
this.
finish. What I'm asking you as the chairman, you are the person who speaks directly to the town manager. You have made it very clear that that is your relationship. If you want to make recommendations as to cuts that need to be made within this budget that will help reduce our operating budget moving forward so we can get to zero without looking towards the undesignated funds, then please make sure that we have those available for a discussion tonight.
Okay, great, and also Carl is available to anybody here on the council that has questions as well. So my relationship with Carl as the chairman, yes, that's how that operates, but I don't sit there and say to him, we shouldn't be coming up with the cuts that we recommend to the council members, and I think you can agree to that, because there's a previous, you can't.
I
Okay, so
actually
in
disagree.
previous council conversations, you didn't feel you could come up with any budget cuts?
No, I actually
No,
disagree.
okay.
Absolutely disagree.
Then you weren't doing your job either, because council members have the opportunity to bring cuts forward. Any member here can say, I think we should cut this, like Carol made mention to certain aspects of the town.
As the chairman, as I reiterate.
Okay, we're good. As the chair, we're going to move on now to
There's
item
an
number
opportunity for you
6,
to
which is
weigh
charter
in.
revision, next steps. Everybody has a copy of the information that Carl has given to us. Any questions on this?
What's in the agenda packet was emailed to you previously and elicited no response, so it's on the agenda to get some reaction to it. First page was what gives you the delineation of who is on the Charter Revision Commission and the steps that the council has to take. The actual process and the calendar and sequence of events was also laid out for you by statute. The end point is looking to focus on an election where you're going to have at least 15% of the electors coming out as determined by the registrar of voters based on their current active list. So based on information from the registrars, 15% is 1,500 voters that can be delivered at a budget meeting, but it's a squeaker. So the recommendation would be either you do it as part of the November election or you do it as a special election. I gave you a write-up for everything that was discussed when you had your workshop on it. You need to make a decision as to who's going to be on the Charter Revision Commission and how long they are going to have for a resolution to be prepared to set the wheels in motion. You'll have to decide between 5 and 15 electors to participate in the process.
Are we deciding that today?
I don't know, because I sent this out after the last meeting looking for feedback. I got no feedback from anybody, so it's here and
take that
it's
as
for you
approval
guys
of what
to
you
decide what you want to do. If you want to move forward, I need to know you want to move forward, and then a resolution can be prepared. I need input, because it's not my job to come up with how long that commission should be working.
Anybody have discussions now? Want to move forward with it? Finalize recommendations?
I guess you have to move forward,
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
in our charter that we have to
Yep.
do it within 5 years.
If you want to get it out to November, we could keep moving it
But
forward.
well, I don't want to get it done this November. You
Don't.
can't make it this November, next November, November of '23. The election of '23 will be, I would hope, a large-size election, because you've got some town council members are up for, so I would target that, Mr. Chairman, as being the date that we have to keep completed. So looking at what Mr. Kilduff has given us here, I think there's one recommendation that we could go for 16 months, and I think probably that is the proper,
16 months is
ending date, 16 months.
that's the maximum allowed.
That's the maximum.
Yep.
And I would think 16 months from, can you do some math for me, Mary? Real quick, I mean, we're in what, 4, so I think 16 months does get us pretty close, right? Get us to about
October is 6 months, so that would be plus 12.
No, 16 plus 4,
It'd be short.
October would be,
October
Four.
would be
We
We wouldn't
16.
have time to put it on.
what'd you say, October
6
would be
months.
12?
November.
6 months.
6 months from now it's till October, right?
Right, and you're looking for the November of the
And all you
following
need
year.
is another 10 months for 16-month deadline.
It's,
So 10, that would be August.
it's 16.
And usually that's when we ended up our last one, if I remember correctly. I think we had to give it to Sharon by September 1st or something like that, so that she could get it and get it to the state and everybody else.
Approved by the board
Right.
by certain dates.
So I think we had a deadline by August 30th. We had to have it in their hands. So I think you could make that if you did it now for 16 months. That's the max. If you want to make it shorter, that's fine. I mean,
I agree.
I think 14 months, you want to make sure we get into the deadline, that's fine. Then get you what? July, get you back to June, and that'll be plenty of time. I mean, there isn't that big of an agenda of things that, we're not changing the entire charter as we did the last time and had to go over things multiple times. I think with the guidance you've already given the charter commission, you could get it done in 14 months. I just a suggestion, 14 or 16, whatever.
Works for me.
So vote in November of '23.
You have 16 months for the commission to do its work. Then,
Right.
then there are the milestones for what has to be done for the commission sending it to the council reviewing it, assuming the council agrees with it, then the council would act, and then you've got 15 months after the council's approval before it can be voted on. So you've got 16 plus 15, so there's plenty of time. If November 23 is the target for a vote, I can back into a calendar for you and make this process have actual dates on it, or no later than dates, so that you can see how the process would roll out.
Okay?
Yeah, you know, I mean,
So the next step would be the people. When is the date that we need to name up the people? Is that the next step?
Well, we got to decide how many members we want.
Oh, okay.
So we can do 5 to 15.
Do we need 15 members?
No.
no way.
You can't, but that's entirely up to us how many we want to put on it.
We had just suggesting, the last two that I was on, we had two consecutive. I believe there were 7 apiece, and that was pretty workable.
I think
That
that's
was
workable.
that was a workable amount of people. I mean, I would even suggest that, you know, maybe you need just 5, that's the minimum, but
Well, you go 15, you need a ton.
no, it just gets too cumbersome. The 7 was great, I mean, good. It was very good. Fortunately, we had good people. There wasn't a lot of long argumentative things going on. They were very cohesive, so 7, that 7 worked twice.
Okay. 7 sounds
7
good
Did
to
I
me.
marry Joe Phelps out there?
Yeah, it is.
She was one of the members. She made it successful.
All right, so we'll go with 7 members?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And what else needed to be addressed?
When do we have to name the people, and how do we do that? Is that the next step? Naming the people?
I think we should have to put it out.
I'm just wondering what the next step is.
The chairman's talking. Go ahead.
So we're going to have to, obviously, once we figure out, now that we agree upon 7 members, get the word out so that we have people that can apply. And obviously, once we have to get a target date for the people that can submit their applications that would want to be members. And then obviously work through those dates at that point.
It would be a good opportunity to reach out to the folks who were on the previous charter revision committee and welcome them back potentially, since there was a substantial amount of work that they completed and knowledge as to the process. And they are aware of some of the sort of outstanding issues that weren't covered in the previous charter that they were thinking that might need to be raised moving forward.
I don't know if you were at the meeting that we talked about, but we did come up with a charge for the Charter Revision Commission of things that we wanted to address. We had a special meeting as related to that. So there's basically the process of us coming up with an idea of what we would like to see looked at, what we want to see addressed. That charge would be given to the commission, and then they would follow through with that. Carl would be obviously involved in those meetings so that obviously it would be structured as to what that Charter Revision Committee is going to be working on. So
There, just so you're aware, there will be tentacles within that. There's many conversations the Charter Revision Committee had that they didn't anticipate impacted other areas of the charter. So I understand there is a framework for their scope of work, but there is always scope creep that takes place, especially with charters.
all right, so we'll start working on those dates, membership, and everything else, and then we'll move forward with that. Okay, thank you. Line item transfers, number 7. We have 2 on our packet. One is from Public Works, one is from Park and Rec Commission. The first one is the Public Works, which is $2,500 overtime for the fields. They're going to increase that. They're going to decrease it by taking money from overtime emergency for $2,500. So do we have a motion to approve the line item transfer for Public Works? Second, discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Next one is the Park and Rec. They need to take $10,348 from the for Peters basketball court refurbish, and they will be taking that money from track reseal and restriping for $10,348. Do we have a motion to approve light item transfer?
Make that motion.
Any discussion?
I just have
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is just a general question, is Park and Rec Commission or eligible for ARPA funds, and is that something that like Bo could ask Carl for?
They've had the discussion. Yeah.
Bo and I have had this discussion. Bo gave me a list of projects. They all don't have a nexus back to COVID. It's all deferred maintenance that hasn't been addressed for years. So
It doesn't qualify.
It doesn't line up under the current way we're approaching.
Okay, I've just been wondering that.
I have a comment. What track and reseal account is this coming from? Do they have leftover money from the last time? Or are they already taking it from, well, because I believe this year, in this year's capital, we're putting $35,000 in for track.
Correct.
Restriping.
Correct.
So I'm a little puzzled. How can we take $10,000 from a thing that people just said is necessary to do the track? And I'm a park rec proponent. I was on it for 14 years, but I'm a little mystified. If you come in at one time and put in your budget, I need $35,000 to continue our track rehab, how can you then come up a little later and say, well, I'll take 10,000 of that and do the basketball court? To me, I would think that you'd have to do the money from someplace else. I wish Mr. Potter was here to explain that to me. How do you?
Well, this goes back to what we just finished discussing at some length and a certain degree of passion. It is excess funds left over from the last time.
Oh, this is excess funds from
Right.
last time. Oh,
And when you-
okay.
And that
I
was
mean,
flagged in the capital plan, so.
Okay, so they had, whatever we gave them for the last time, they've had this sitting there. Oh, okay, that makes a little difference to me, I guess.
It was unspent.
We
It was-
unused money.
Correct.
They typically do it in a 2-year or 2
Right.
budgets. Yeah, so it's usually different parts of the project, so.
I understand that, and that's what got me. I mean, you know, we did that 3 years ago, I guess. We gave them 35 and 35 or whatever it was to do the track. They did do the track. Okay, so they had leftover money. That explains it to me. Okay.
This was
I was just worried
approved
about.
previously for carryover by the council.
Yeah, no
It's-
problem.
it's
Okay,
the
if it's a
process.
pre-carryover money, that's fine. I understand better. Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Item number 8, which is the council discussion on future projects and/or correspondence. Everybody has the,
Everybody has the log. 4 projects on the log. ARPA is, applications are being processed. I noted this in my report of where we're at in terms of number of applications that have come in and where we're at process-wise. Pearson School, the attorneys for the 2 parties are coordinating. An initial meeting was held with the AG's office on process and what is the appropriate court of venue. And discussions remain ongoing between attorneys representing the 2 parties. Fire Department Facility Plan, this is the same report it was last meeting, which was to schedule a workshop to discuss the project for those that are unaware of it. And then Radio Replacement Project, this is the same report that it was last meeting, which is additional funding has been proposed in the budget and an ARPA allocation.
If we, may
yeah,
I? So if there is a workshop necessary for the fire department facility plan, should we set that up, or can we set that up?
I mean, we tried.
We were trying to set it up, and then we had some schedule conflicts, so we have to go back out for new dates.
Is that okay, so it's all right, so you will alert us when they're ready for that workshop?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'm curious when or how we're going to continue the discussion of the facilities plan for WPCC. Have they approached you, Carl, to discuss further?
Yes, so we've had a back and forth, and one of the ARPA funding allocations is to allow them to continue to do their study work. So we discussed that at a council meeting, and I put that information out there.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, but they have some fairly substantial projects, and are they going to be considered for this document? Seeing that it's very similar to, i.e. the fire department, their requests, some fairly substantial dollar amounts that we need to start looking for, potentially
At
in the
this
future.
point, they haven't prepped anything to get to that point. Studies are still ongoing. There's a financial impact study that has to be done. There's another study that they're in process on right now. And then the ARPA-funded study is sort of the next piece for capacity and the rest. And then you start to tee up for larger numbers and what the financial impact is to the town's budget to make those projects happen. And based on a conversation we had already with DEEP, they're not a fan of the previously articulated priority of the downtown. DEEP is not a fan of the previously articulated priority that the downtown be first. Their desire is that it be the coastal area be first. So it changes some of the calculus of how things were decided before, and then raises some questions about if there's funding for resiliency, maybe, that you could bring to bear on that kind of project.
And the project for Rocky Ledge as well, that's no longer a priority. I mean, I think this should be an agenda item at our council meeting, one of the ones coming up.
We talked about Rocky Ledge with ARPA too, and I received no council interest in doing that whatsoever. And I went to the engineer, tried to slice it up into different portions of it, and there was no feedback on that end.
It doesn't mean it shouldn't be something we need to keep on our project list or future potential options should funding become available.
Yeah, that's why I really like this tool to be something that's meaningful rather than just a couple of things here. It's not strategic, it's not driven by goals and priorities, it's just a list of stuff. So if that, what you're talking about, I agree with you 100%. There should be a process, it should be strategic, it should be thoughtful, it should reflect the town council's goals, it shouldn't just be a list of stuff.
So why don't we have that workshop? We've never had that workshop. The new council has not had a workshop
For which?
on
I've
discussing
raised how
our
this should be,
goals.
I've discussed how this should be structured repeatedly, and again, I get no feedback. I asked for a review of goals, and again, I received no feedback. So if you want to have that conversation, I need to hear it from the council that you want to do these
I think we
things.
should have a workshop. We've heard that talked about, but we've never had one.
All right, I'll make a motion to add next agenda or a future agenda when is convenient after the town budget to have a workshop.
We don't need a motion for that, we could just arrange it. We'll set it up.
Okay, great. Carl, I have a question about ARPA funds. Let's take human services, for example. They have a lot of money that they're able to, ARPA money that they're able to access. Do they have to fill out an application too?
As a department, no.
Okay, good.
Applicants, yes.
Okay.
We need to document income eligibility for
Okay.
reporting back to Treasury.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Anything else? All good? All right, moving on, number 10, Chairman's report. Nothing is based upon what we have left on this agenda. We'll move forward right to the Chairman, the Town Manager's report.
We have the written report given to you, which touches on that we've gotten 10 applications thus far from nonprofits and arts organizations. We're having a healthy dialogue back and forth. Additional information is provided and clarity on some of their financial statements. Some of them are in varying degrees of completeness. COG held its meeting. The Hammonasset Trolley will run again, but only on the weekends. That's a DOT-funded initiative. Household hazardous waste, it will take place only in satellite collection this year. There will no longer be Essex as a drop-off point. Clinton is the first household hazardous waste on April 23rd. Clinton residents can go to any other satellite when they are announced and go forward. Harbor management plan, we issued an RFP. The cost of the plan is short for what the requested grant from the Port Authority delivered. So I've had conversations with the Port Authority, I've had conversations with the bidder in order to try and figure out how we can balance out a scope of work that updates the harbor management plan with the commission. I think we have a path forward. I just need to firm it up with the consultant before we move forward with contracting. The prior vendor that operated the concession stands down at the marina has confirmed that he will be operating there again this year. So that's a step forward. I've had a conversation already with the town planner in Westbrook. There's an interest for Westbrook, Old Saybrook, and Clinton to come together to do seek a grant that deals with coastal resiliency and resiliency planning. We have some effort to that being done by UConn students, but this would be more of an official plan and to have a regional approach. There is interest in Old Saybrook. Westbrook is preparing to take the point and has been looking at what the grant requirements are. We have some work that could feed into that process and potentially pull off a regional grant. So that's more work in process. Also received a letter from an individual requesting the town take a look at putting in a noise ordinance. Clinton does not have one. Some towns do. This would be a matter of what's your policy direction as to whether you want to have a noise ordinance. If you want to have one, I would suggest you create a subcommittee of the council, much like you did for blight, to talk through the issues of decibel level emitting from one zone to another zone, who's going to be the enforcement mechanism. You'll have to include adding a cost for an audiometer, training of whoever is going to administer the audiometer, and then annual certification of staff and calibration of the audiometer would have to start to be built into the budget going forward. So there's some policy issues around what's exempted, what's not exempted, things of that nature. So there's a little bit more to unpack than just my neighbor is noisy and I want somebody to stop that. So if you're interested in it, please let me know and we can go forward.
It's not the first time it's come up. We have moved forward with this process quite a few times. It probably would make sense for us to have a public discussion on it and get some feedback once we have the components in order to communicate back to the public about process. Carl, if you can find out the health district's role, I'm aware of other health districts are the ones who both monitor and enforce that policy. I'm a little curious as to how that would work within our health district, if that's a potential. We've heard from the police department in the past about their concerns about enforcement. So probably an update from our chief as well would be helpful.
Yeah, I've had noise ordinances where I've worked before, and the police department is obviously the 24/7 agency that can go out and take the meter reading. If you're going to rely on a town employee, it's going to be 9 to 4, and not all noise takes place between 9 and 4. So even if it's a health department, it's going to be 9 to 4. So that's not necessarily the best delivery model. You're going to want 24. I would think you'd want 24/7.
And I'm not aware of how they've implemented it, if they have put on staff, 24-hour staff, whether or not the regional health district is looking to expand their services. Again, it might be helpful just to understand what their role would be as opposed to the local police department.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it before. I've done it a couple of different ways.
That'd be great to find
There's a
out.
lot to talk about. The only other item to call your attention to is Finance Director and I had a ratings call with Moody's. We don't use Moody's as a rating agency for our debt. We shifted to Standard & Poor's a few years back. Moody's did downgrade the town's rating at one point in time. The purpose of the call was their ongoing monitoring of the town. So we had a conversation about management policy changes, size of undesignated fund balance, where the town is going, what the town's outlook is, and for the potential of them to take back that information to their rating committee and I guess see if an upgrade is warranted to restore our prior bond rating. We'll have to see how that goes. They'll take it back to their committee and let us know whether or not there's an interest of upgrading our bond rating based on where we are today. And the other items are relative to executive session. The only other item that I was supposed to bring up that I was asked to speak to was hiring of the senior program coordinator. That's in process. My priority was to backfill vacancies where we've got people that have left. And those are the positions that are on the agenda for approval today because those are important to the town's immediate operations.
Now, is the EDC still involved with the trolley? Or is it now totally run by DOT?
The trolley is housed and available through Estuary Transit, so people can rent it. EDC does not operate the trolley during the summer. It has never run during the summer, except for last year where the DOT wanted to use it as a shuttle to take people from Old Saybrook through Clinton to Hammonasset. They ran that 7 days a week last year for promotion of the beach and to connect people through mass transit. They're continuing it again this year, but during the summer and only on the weekends. The EDC's interest is more in a fall, winter, not summer. Summer operation, it was always available for people to rent.
Carl, does the council need to make any more decisions regarding the signage? Or is the signage all wrapped up and ready to go?
I don't believe so.
No?
From how this council has acted, I believe we're done. However, the EDC decided to make a decision that was a 180 from what they previously stated and where this council previously voted.
So do we need to
I've
vote
now
again?
spoken to John Allen, and I believe we're on the same page that we were on before, but for some reason we were not on the same page.
So it's ready to go?
So where does the project stand at this moment?
Now that I don't have to keep spinning my wheels, we're ready to go with ordering it.
Cool.
If I didn't have to spin my wheels doing nothing, then it would have been a little bit faster.
What's the desire for the noise ordinance? Just so we know going forward.
I think we need more information.
Oh, we're going to set up a subcommittee?
If we need to do that.
Do you want
To get information.
Do you want a discussion at this meeting and then go to a subcommittee, or what? Just
Right.
Well, I'll tell you that
Yeah, we'll go to future meeting. All right, we'll get that on the future agenda.
you never get it.
Okay.
It was, there is, excuse me
Yep.
one second. And Tom asked me a question, we said I was saying years ago. There is an old noise thing that was signed way back, like in '06 or something, after.
That was Willie.
No, he was McCusker, because I was a selectman, and then I was on that thing, and it wasn't as good as, I guess, the latest ones are. But there is something on the
I don't
books.
think it ever got approved.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
I
Carol.
don't
I
think
know
it
we
got approved,
presented it, and I don't think it ever, I don't know where it went.
I always remember.
There's a piece of paper
Yeah, there
in
was
the
a
ordinance
discussion, a
thing that
lengthy
does say,
discussion, but it didn't
there's
happen.
an ordinance thing, but
It's too hard next to the turnpike. I mean, you can't put the same rules in place for this area as that area, and it just
it's gonna be
died.
quite extensive, I'll
All
tell
right,
you that.
yep. All right.
But speaking of blight, has anything moved forward to the blight commission? Have they seen anything done?
I think they've-
Haven't? Okay,
they
great.
only meet when a complaint elevates to that level because they want to contest the decision by the blight officer.
Because Kathy King talks about many blight cases, and I wonder what it takes to,
I think we're talking about time frame also, so perhaps when many pertains is not what's on the frying pan right now, but things that have been dealt with to date over the time span of it only goes to that committee if they disagree and want to fight the determination that their property has blight.
okay.
That is the only reason they exist, that's the only reason they live.
No meeting.
Good. All right, town council committee liaison reports. Does anyone have anything to report?
I have a Board of Ed. Board of Ed had a meeting on April 4th. COVID numbers remain low. The schools are planning end-of-year events. The Morgan Musical was this past weekend. Elliott was Annie. Spring sports are underway. Morgan School was accredited by the New England Association of Schools, NEASC, and received the final report. The subcommittees have been working on policy. work on facilities, project coordination of HVAC, lighting, and possible boiler upgrades. They're on the way with strategic planning, and that's about it.
Thanks, Chris.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned Board of Ed, maybe between you and Mr. Kilduff. Does anyone know whether or not they have processed all the proper paperwork to get the reimbursement from the Morgan High School? Have they submitted that application to the state or not?
No, they have not. They're asking the school facility unit for direction on how to move that forward, to set the wheels in motion, so they're starting the process by asking where to begin. We haven't actually signed paperwork to that effect.
Okay.
That is an agency that's in a little bit of turmoil right now with a federal investigation into school reimbursements. So I don't imagine that they're all going to have 100% attention on Clinton when it comes in.
Okay.
So, but
Because I know we have a substantial, as you know,
central office will
substantial amount of money coming back to us.
Central office is initiating the process. They are supposed to set the wheels in motion, not the town. So they're getting guidance on how to set it process going forward because they've never done it before.
Have they hired that organization in order to process it? You know, a number of years ago, there was an organization that most of the towns are utilizing for that final application process. Or are they handling it themselves?
They're just collecting information right now.
They're just collecting information?
They don't know how to initiate the process, so they're asking the state for guidance on initiating the process. What forms, what paperwork, what has to be done.
And so they're not pursuing it through a third party to help process the...
Haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move into, looking for a motion to go into executive session for personnel and invite Carl and Mary. Okay, we are back from executive session and we will move on now to item number 13, employment agreement for finance accounts payable clerk, land use clerk, and WPCC clerk. We will look for a motion for the town council to ratify the appointments for these positions.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you, and we will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I got it.